Guzzlord's attack Grindcore is bugged, just the same way that Team Rocket Grunt is also bugged. This is a continuation of the bug we found in the last video about Team Rocket Grunt, but with the release of Extradimensional Crisis, giving us Guzzlord EX, we now have a Pokemon card that does what Team Rocket Grunt does as an attack. But thankfully, we have an answer to explain how it works. The only issue is it's led to even more questions about the mechanics of this game. Welcome back to another TCG Pocket video, it's Bro Vinny here. If you want to see this bug in action with Team Rocket Grunt, I recommend you go back to my previous video about Team Rocket Grunt. In this video, I'm going to show you my test results for Grindcore on Guzzlord EX. The attack does 30 damage, but we're mostly focused on the effect that is flip a coin until tails. For each heads, discard a random energy from your opponent's Pokemon. And just like Team Rocket Grunt, this bug can only be seen if you're up against Superior, and it's not every time. So in all of these scenarios in a moment, I'll be attacking with Grindcore against Superior. In this situation here, my Guzzlord does 30 damage, flips one head, and discards one energy. Pretty standard. As you can see, one energy is lost. In no situation have I ever seen where I flipped one head and I discarded 0 energy. That's kind of important, which we'll come back to in a moment, when we actually explain how the mechanic works based on our current understanding. Where things get a little tricky is when we flip 2 heads. Have a look at this situation. My opponent loses 2 energy. But rarely, this situation happens where if I flip 2 heads, flipping 1 and 2 heads, and my opponent only loses 1 energy. Let's watch that again in case you missed it. 2 heads, but my opponent only loses 1 energy. This was what we found with Team Rocket Grunt as well. Sometimes you just discard less energy than you would have expected. There were a lot of good theories in the comment section on the last video, including some that were related to maybe it's the fact that I ran a 2-star version of the Team Rocket Grunt as opposed to the regular version, which obviously doesn't happen with Grindcore since I'm using the same Guzzlord EX, and yet both situations can happen. That already rules out theories about which card I use, which alternate version of the card I use for Team Rocket Grunt. Although I think it's worth noting that this situation where I rolled 2 heads but only discarded 1 energy is very rare. I did this about 8 times, rolling 2 heads, and only saw this happen once. This is also important information for how we explain the mechanic in theory in a moment. Let me show you some more of these special scenarios. In this situation, I roll 4 heads, which under more normal circumstances, we may have expected 4 energy to be lost, but the opponent only lost 3. Let's see that one more time. 4 heads, the opponent started with 5, ended up with 2, so they lost 3 energies. And I just want to show you one more interesting thing. This is not related to the bug at all. What happened in this situation is I almost ran out of time. I was just doing a lot of things at the same time and I wasn't watching my time limit. And with this little time remaining, I quickly clicked on attack using Grindcore, and this is what happened. My attack was made, but I never got to flip the coin. Yet, have a look at my opponent. Let's go back once more. My opponent started with 7 energies. I made the 30 damage attack and they lost 2 energies. I never touched the coin from a graphical perspective. And if you actually check my battle log, apparently I did flip 2 heads and discarded 2 energies. Once again, this is not related to the bug, but I just thought it'd be interesting to show you that you can actually carry out a full attack, including all effects associated with the attack, even if you're just about to run out of time to show all of the animations, including coin flips. Interestingly though, and I didn't record it because I wasn't recording the other screen, my opponent's screen. On the opponent's screen, the coin flips actually did happen and I saw 2 heads were flipped. I just thought it was interesting to show you that there is a difference between what you see and what your opponent sees, if you're just about to reach the time limit. If anything, this is just a graphical bug, not a mechanical bug. Okay, so back to the Team Rocket Grunt or the Guzzlord EX energy bug, which you might call the superior bug. It doesn't really matter what you call it. You do need to have a situation where you have Superior's ability or something similar, which allows one energy to be worth 2 or more, versing a Pokemon or a trainer card that removes energy, or something to that effect. The best explanation I saw, which I hearted as the comment in the last video, is by Dude2056. Dude says, I think what happens is that Team Rocket Grunt, or in our case today, Guzzlord, chooses energies randomly. If it chooses 2 energies that happen to be paired together, then it still ends up removing 1 energy. For example, if Superior has 2 energies attached, it's actually 4 energies because of its ability, and let's call them 1A, 1B, 2A, 2B. If 2 heads are flipped, using Team Rocket Grunt or Guzzlord, there are numerous ways in which the energies can be removed. But if 1A and 1B both spawning from the same energy that was attached, or rather energy 1, then only 1 energy gets removed. This makes a lot of sense from our data collection because, as I said earlier, out of about 8 tries, only 1 of them did I see where 2 heads were rolled but only 1 energy was removed. Because there are just more ways to pick different energies that are different attached energies. Much less likely are you going to pick the same energy that's attached and its dummy energy, the extra one that's spawned by the ability, if things are picked randomly. In this theory, we also assume that if a dummy energy, so the 1B for example, the extra energy that's spawned, if that were chosen, you still lose the entire energy. So even though 1A is the real attached energy, 1B once picked also removes 1A. And you can't really deduce this, I just find this out from doing the test a lot of times. I rolled a lot of single heads with Team Rocket Grunt or Guzzlord, and in 0% of the time did I ever see 0 energy get removed. So that's one assumption we're making here with this theory, but I think it's going to work because I've just not seen a case where it didn't remove an energy by rolling 1 head against Superior. There is a second assumption made, is that all the energies are chosen at the same time for discarding. If the energies were chosen one by one, this couldn't happen. So let me explain that one more time. If I choose both 1A and 1B randomly just by chance, then only 1 energy gets removed. But if the energies were deleted or discarded one by one, let's say you were to discard 1B first, then that should remove the entire 1 energy and you would only have the second energy left to choose, in which case every situation where you rolled 2 heads, you would remove 2 energies. So there's a game design mechanic where all energies are chosen randomly at first, so that sometimes you can land 1A and 1B in the same hit in order to discard only 1 energy with flipping 2 heads. In a physical TCG game, I'm not sure that that would be how it works. If you've played the physical TCG before, you let us know how this works. When you discard energies, do you choose one by one, or do you decide which ones are collectively discarded and then do it all at once? And does it matter? I will actually show you an example where it does matter in the physical TCG in a moment from my own research. But if you have any other scenarios like this, you let us know, where maybe the order of choosing which energy is discarded actually affects the outcome. Regardless, it seems like in TCG Pocket, it's all chosen at the same time before it's being discarded. The choice of which energy to be discarded is often seen with Superior's ability is in retreating. So I've got Superior right now who requires 2 energy to retreat. And if I actually click on retreating, I actually have a choice. I've got a choice to just discard 1 energy and press OK. That would allow me to retreat, or I can choose to discard both energies and retreat. So let me show you. I can just use 1, and obviously I can also use 2 to retreat. In the case of this execute here, if it only requires 1 energy to retreat, then it will still just take the 1. And just to complete the picture, as you can see, I can use both energies on Superior and discard both. Not that I usually would, but maybe if I'm up against something like a Tapu Lele who can attack the bench based on how many energies I've got, then I would remove those Superior energies. So the difference here is that with Team Rocket Grunt or Guzzlord, both of those, the system decides at random which energies to discard, and sometimes it takes 1, sometimes it takes 2 for each of your 2 heads. For self-discarding though, or retreating, It seems like the case of choosing how many to discard on your own. You can just decide to remove 1 or 2 depending on the situation. And yes, just to show you almost every scenario, even if I've got a Pokemon with 4 energies, I can just choose to discard 2 to, as you can see now, press OK to retreat, but I also can choose 3 or 4. It's up to me. You don't get this choice under normal circumstances of how many energies to retreat. You can't choose to electively delete more energies from your Pokemon, even if you're up against Tapu Lele, so that you don't get damage. So in this case, if I remove all of the energy from our Alolan Exeggutor, Tapu Lele would do 0 damage to me in the bench. Whereas had I left, say, 2 energies, then Tapu Lele would do 40 damage to my Alolan Exeggutor on the bench. So like this, if I choose to only remove 2, and then Tapu Lele decides to hit my bench, as you can see, it now does 80 damage to my bench. Now the 80 is because it still counts as 4 energies despite having 2 because of the superior ability. Of course, if I discarded all of the energies on purpose, removing 4 attached energies, then it would have done 0 to my Alolan Exeggutor. In this very niche situation, it could have been a deciding factor of winning or losing. But this is not a bug, this was always the case, and we've seen this since the release of Superior, when it was commonly used with Celebi or other grass-type Pokemon at the time. We kind of already knew that you can choose how many energies to discard. It's just that comparing that to Guzzlord's situation where you don't get to choose. And yes, the card itself says to randomly discard, so therefore you can't choose, it makes a difference. And in addition to that, which we've already said before, is that all the energies are chosen to be discarded all at once rather than one by one. Now let's go back one step. Back with Tapu Lele, its attack does 20 damage for each energy on your opponent's Pokemon. But is it each of the attached energy or is it each of the total energy? So here we've got Tapu Lele against Servine. Servine does not have the superior ability, and this is the normal situation. It does 20 damage. And like you saw earlier when I had the Alolan Exeggutor, when Superior's ability is active, Tapu Lele would do double the damage because each of the energy counted as 2. So in this case, 2 attached energy plus 2 more because of the dummy energies, in total 4, each of them doing 20 damage, a total of 80. But the problem is the text on Tapu Lele. Earlier, we tried to distinguish the difference between attached energy, which is the energy you give from the energy zone to the Pokemon every turn, and you can only attach 1 per turn unless there's some other special thing going on like a trainer card or whatever, but you can only attach 1 energy from your energy zone to your Pokemon every turn. And if we were to call that attached energy, and the extra energy generated from Superior's ability is just called energy, or what we call the dummy energy, we've got a problem with the card text. So Superior's ability, Jungle Totem, says each grass energy attached to your grass Pokemon provides 2 grass energy. The key word is energy attached. It's saying that the attached energy or energy attached, the stuff you get from your energy zone, the little circular grass bubble that shows up, that's the attached energy. That becomes 2 times grass energy in effect. It doesn't say that the attached energy gives you 2 times attached energy. Otherwise, 1 energy would give you infinite energy. But let's put that aside for now. It in effect says 1 attached energy gives you 2 energies. But then we have Tapu Lele's text saying this attack does 20 damage to one of your opponent's Pokemon for each energy attached to that Pokemon. It doesn't say for each energy on that Pokemon. So if it says attached energy, it shouldn't have done 80 damage on 2 energies on a Superior. It should have done 40 damage if the text is completely consistent. So as I said before, even if Team Rocket Grunt and Guzzlord are not bugged and they are intended as the correct mechanic because that's just how the game works, it randomly decides which energy is removed, and if it happens that the dummy is connected to the attached, then you only lose the 1 energy, that's all fine. But then we have Tapu Lele who says attached energy yet the damage is doubled as though it's counting the full energy including the dummy energy. I hope that makes sense. Now at this point, I'd like to bring up another problem, so the rabbit hole goes a little bit deeper. One of my mates, Starchy, suggested to me to look into the translations in the original text, maybe in Japanese or other languages, to see if there is a difference between energy and attached energy. Do they even use these terms as though they're separate to begin with, or are we just talking about a translation problem? Now, I don't actually speak Japanese, so if you do, let us know what you think. But in the Japanese and other languages text, I don't believe the text attached energy is used in Tapu Lele. It seems to just use the same term for Tapu Lele and Team Rocket Grunt, which would make it consistent because Tapu Lele is now doing the correct amount of damage. So maybe it's just a mistranslation. My personal hunch from all my research is that it actually is a mistranslation on Tapu Lele, which should also mean the same mistranslation and same problem with Alakazam and Gallade EX. They shouldn't be saying attached energy. So let me know what you guys think, whether Tapu Lele is actually mistranslated, because we can't have it both ways where Team Rocket Grunt and Guzzlord are not bugged, but then Tapu Lele does the wrong thing, or that Tapu Lele is doing the right thing, but in that case, attached energy and an energy are not separate things, and it just bugs out what we were saying before. Alright, so back to Du's theory about how this works. This is great and all, but does it really matter? It does actually have one consequence. That is again very niche. It's unlikely you're going to encounter this very specific scenario, but maybe in the future when new cards get released, similar cards with similar effects to Superior, this might then become a bigger problem. The consequence of this mechanic is that the more energies you attach to your Pokemon, they're less likely two of the same energy, so the dummy and the attached that are linked together, so like 1A and 1B for example, are going to be picked. So let's say you've only attached two energies to Superior, and it currently has 1A, 1B, 2A, 2B because it's counting as 4 energy. There's a fair chance that 2 heads would give you either 1A and 1B or 2A and 2B together, removing only 1 energy as the result. But if I had, say, 100 energies on this Superior, it's very unlikely for 1A and 1B or 2A and 2B or 3A and 3B to be selected together. It's more likely that it will just be 1A and 15B to be selected, so then most of the time you'll be removing 2 energies. So consider that if you actually keep your energies to a minimum, so Superior only needs 2 energies to attack. If you added more energies, your opponent is more likely to remove multiple energies. If you kept it to a minimum, it's more likely to remove less energies. Then you would try to keep it to a minimum and just put your energies on other Pokemon instead. Again, I don't think this situation has ever happened in any battle ever, but it is a consequence of this theory. The next thing I did was I looked into whether physical TCG card games had something similar, because we can use that as a reference on how this should work if it does. And it turns out there is. The Pokemon Go Charizard has the ability Burn Brightly, which works just like Superior. It makes all fire energy attached to Pokemon on your side be worth 2 times the energy. And it also uses the terminology attached energy versus just energy. So if used with another Pokemon card, and if you were to combine it with another Pokemon card that discards a certain amount of energy or attached energy or energy cards, then what would actually happen? Would you be discarding half the amount? Well, let's take a look. There's actually another terminology to learn. In this other Charizard that has the ability Roaring Resolve and the attack Continuous Blaze Ball, it says discard all fire energy attached to this Pokemon. This attack does 50 more damage for each card you discarded in this way. So Pokemon Go Charizard making your fire energy worth double doesn't actually double the attack damage of this card, because it says the damage depends on how many cards you discarded. The number of cards, or rather the attached energy, hasn't changed despite having the other Charizard on the field. So now we have 3 terms for energy. We've got energy, which is anything, and then we've got attached energy, and we've got energy card. And what I found most interesting was even base set Charizard, the original Charizard card, already had this problem of terminology and interpretation. Its ability says you may turn all energy attached to the Charizard into fire energy. So this is the cards that you attach. And its attack is discard 2 energy cards. So even if the energy is worth multiple, you have to discard 2 cards or attached energies. But later on in a different set, another Charizard card says discard 2 energy from this Pokemon for the same attack. It turns out the text has varied over the years. You actually need to read the actual text to make sure the card hasn't actually changed in mechanic, and it turns out Charizard has over the years the same card. So with this Charizard card, you can actually just discard 1 if you had the Pokemon Go Charizard on the field, because 1 fire energy is worth 2 because of its ability. Now, you might argue that they're too many generations apart, they wouldn't have been legally allowed to be used together in the same deck anyway. Let's take another look at another example where energy becomes a problem, and that is double colorless energy. That is 1 energy card that's worth 2. And this card has existed for a long time. I think it might have existed even way back in base set. So would double colorless energy be worth 2 fire energy to a Charizard? But then if you have to discard 2 energy or 2 energy cards, how would you discard them? And it turns out it just depends on which Charizard you're using and what the text actually says. And if it were this Charizard that says discard 2 energy, then 1 colorless energy will work as 2 energies. It doesn't say discard 2 energy cards. But if it's like the retreat cost of our superior in TCG Pocket, you could choose to discard the double colorless energy first, and then for your second energy, another energy, maybe a fire energy. So in total, you've actually chosen to discard 3 energies, maybe to prevent an attack that does more damage from, say, like a Tapu Lele attack or something to that effect. I don't actually know how the official ruling works, but this is what I've gathered from my research. We also see this kind of thing happening with trainer cards. So in physical TCG, we've got energy removal that removes 1 energy card attached to one of your opponent's Pokemon. So you have to choose 1 card, not 1 energy. Now, it doesn't really matter because in either case, you remove 1 card anyway, right? Well, there's super energy removal that can remove 2, but in super energy removal, it allows you to remove 2 energy cards, so a double colorless energy wouldn't count as 2 energies for removal. It only counts as 1 card for removal. But then even later in the releases, we've got a thing called a crushing hammer, where you can discard 1 energy from one of your opponent's Pokemon, and in this case it doesn't say energy card, it says 1 energy. So there you have it, guys. I hope that clears up, but then also brings more questions about how Guzzlord and Team Rocket Grunt are, well, kind of bugged, but also maybe it does work as long as you accept that that's just how the game is designed. Thank you for watching, guys. Let me know what you guys think, whether Grindcore on Guzzlord EX and Team Rocket Grunt's effect, whether the interpretation and the mechanic actually align. And if that's the case, is Tapu Lele the one that's bugged or mistranslated?